Did you know that seniors who make up only 13% of the United States population account for 18% of all suicides in the country? And that elderly white males have the highest suicide rate of any group at over 4 times the national average? But what's even more alarming is that there are deadly myths about depression in seniors that prevent millions from getting the help they desperately need and lead to fatal consequences that could have been completely avoided. Today, we're going to expose 5 dangerous myths about depression in older adults that could literally be a matter of life and death. We'll review why the belief that depression is a normal part of aging is not only wrong, but deadly. We'll uncover the shocking truth about how depression actually presents in seniors and why most people miss the warning signs completely. We'll discuss why the myth that confused elderly people are just experiencing normal aging is causing families to ignore serious mental health crises. We'll explore the devastating misconception that there's nothing you can do to help a senior who doesn't want help. And finally, we'll reveal the most dangerous myth of all, that seniors who contemplate suicide are making rational decisions when the reality is far more complex and treatable. But before we dive into these life-saving facts, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up because this information could help you save a life, and we need to spread awareness about this critical issue that affects millions of families around the world. Let's start with the first and perhaps most dangerous myth, the belief that depression is simply a normal part of getting older. This misconception is literally killing people, because when families and even healthcare providers accept sadness and withdrawal as inevitable consequences of aging, they fail to recognize and treat a serious medical condition that affects more than 6.5 million of our nation's 35 million seniors. The truth is that depression is not a normal part of aging. In fact, research shows that well-being generally increases with age, and most older adults feel satisfied with their lives, despite often having more illnesses or physical challenges than younger people. Yes, there are certain factors that put seniors at increased risk for depression, such as isolation, illness, losses, and major life changes, but experiencing these challenges doesn't make depression inevitable or acceptable. What makes this myth so deadly is that untreated depression in seniors doesn't just affect mood. It increases the risk for physical and cognitive decline, accelerates the aging process at the cellular level, and often has fatal consequences through suicide and other health complications. When we dismiss depression as normal aging, we're essentially telling seniors that their suffering doesn't matter and that they should just accept a diminished quality of life. The second deadly myth is that elderly people who commit suicide are making logical, rational decisions to end their lives rather than live with pain or reduced quality of life. While this might seem reasonable on the surface, research reveals a much more complex and tragic reality. For most seniors who die by suicide, untreated depression or mental illness is the primary factor, not a calculated decision about quality of life. Here's what's truly heartbreaking about this myth. Many depressed seniors who die by suicide actually sought help, but the signs were missed. 20% see a doctor the day they die, 40% see a doctor the week they die, and 70% see a doctor in the month they die. But because of misconceptions about how depression presents in older adults and the stigma surrounding mental health, these crucial opportunities for intervention are lost. The reality is that many seniors at risk feel hopeless, but are unaware of the resources and treatment options that could dramatically improve their quality of life. They may fear losing their independence or being forced into a nursing home when there are actually many other choices available. But depression clouds their judgment and makes these alternatives seem impossible to see. This brings us to the third dangerous myth, that seniors will clearly tell you when they're sad and depressed, and that confusion, difficulty concentrating, and irritability are not signs of depression. This misconception causes families and healthcare providers to miss critical warning signs because depression in older adults often presents very differently than in younger people. In seniors, depression may manifest as irritability, confusion, memory problems, difficulty concentrating, physical aches and pains, sleep disturbances, or loss of appetite, rather than the classic symptoms of sadness and hopelessness that we typically associate with depression. The perceived stigma of mental health may keep seniors from expressing their true feelings directly. Instead, they might complain about physical symptoms or seem confused and disoriented. What makes this particularly dangerous is that these symptoms of depression in seniors can mimic other diseases like dementia or other medical conditions and are thus often missed or misattributed to normal aging. An older person is much more likely to seek help for physical ailments than for depression, which means that without careful screening and proper diagnostic evaluation, the underlying depression goes untreated while everyone focuses on treating the physical symptoms. The fourth myth that can have deadly consequences is the belief that an elderly person doesn't want help and isn't being abused by anyone. There's nothing you can do to help them. This passive approach to senior mental health has resulted in countless preventable tragedies, because the reality is there are many things you can do even when someone seems resistant to help. First, understand that depression itself often makes people feel hopeless and believe that nothing can help them, so their resistance to treatment may actually be a symptom of the very condition they need help for, rather than a rational decision. You can contact eldercare professionals or helplines for guidance on how to approach the situation and talk to the person effectively. Additionally, many states have mandatory reporting statutes that obligate certain professionals to report self-neglect or situations where a person may harm themselves. If a senior is unable to care for themselves properly or shows signs of being a danger to themselves, there are legal mechanisms in place to ensure they receive necessary services and protection. The key is knowing that resistance to help doesn't mean the situation is hopeless. It often means the person is scared, confused, or overwhelmed by their symptoms and needs a compassionate, knowledgeable approach to help them see that treatment is possible and that their life has value. The fifth and perhaps most insidious myth is that depression in seniors isn't that serious or dangerous because they're old anyway. This ageist attitude treats senior lives as less valuable and ignores the fact that depression is a serious medical condition with potentially fatal consequences regardless of age. The statistics are stark. There is a myth that depression is not dangerous, yet 20% of people who suffer from depression die by suicide, making it one of the most lethal mental health conditions. And for seniors, the risk is even higher because they often have access to more lethal means, their attempts are more likely to be successful, and they're less likely to be discovered quickly. But the danger goes beyond suicide. Untreated depression in seniors leads to faster cognitive decline, increased risk of dementia, weakened immune systems that make them more susceptible to infections and illnesses, poor medication compliance that can worsen chronic conditions, and social isolation that further deteriorates their physical and mental health. What makes this myth particularly harmful is that it prevents families from taking senior depression seriously and advocating for proper treatment. When we act as if depression is just part of being old, we fail to recognize it as a serious medical emergency it often is. So, what can you do with this information? First, recognize that depression in seniors is a serious medical condition that requires professional treatment, just like diabetes or heart disease would. Second, learn to recognize the often subtle signs of depression in older adults, including irritability, confusion, physical complaints, and withdrawal from activities they once enjoyed. Third, don't be afraid to ask direct questions about someone's mental health. Research shows that asking someone if they are having thoughts of suicide doesn't increase their risk, it actually provides them with an opportunity to get help. Fourth, connect seniors with mental health resources and don't give up if they initially resist help. And finally, advocate for better mental health screening and treatment in healthcare settings where seniors receive care. The most important thing to remember is that senior depression is treatable and that getting help can literally save lives. With proper treatment, many seniors can return to enjoying life, engaging with family and friends, and maintaining their independence for years to come.